Welcome everybody to our Women's History panel. We have a panel here of various women from Pikes Peak Community College, and the hope is just to have a conversation about their identity as women, how that sort of paved the way for them through their careers and lives. Me personally, I'm super excited to be a part of this panel. As a as a woman going through her 20s, I'm trying to find myself, navigate through a lot of these different circumstances that these beautiful women already have. So I'm very excited to speak with each and every one of them. So without further ado, we'll kick off the first question, which is, what is your name, your preferred pronouns, and what's a 5-second pitch about you?
Okay, I'll start. I'm Karen Cavalli. I'm in the Marketing and Communication Department at the college. And I consider myself a Jackie of all trades and a master of none.
I'll go next. My name is Tamara Canifax, pronouns she, her, hers. I'm also in the marketing department at PPCC. And I would say I'm both unassuming and humorous with ever-changing and evolving interests, both personally and professionally. So kind of like you, Karen, a Jackie of all trades, but master of none.
Hi, everyone. I'm Regina Lewis. I'm the Department Chair of Communication at Pikes Peak Community College, as well as the Special Assistant to the President for Academic Excellence and Inclusion. And I would say that I am a visionary, budget-conscious, transformational leader.
And I am Kathy Labreck. I am the Law Enforcement Academy Director here at Pikes Peak Community College. This is actually a second career for me. I've been here about 10 years after retiring 22 and a half years with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. So looking forward to getting started. I'm also she, hers, hers.
Thank you all so much. And just for the sake of continuity and organization, we'll just go in the same order going forward as we answer the question. So we had Karen, then Tamara, and then Regina, and then Kathy went last. So we'll go in that order.
Okay.
So for our first real question, what's your biggest dream? Also, are there any roadblocks in the way based on your identity that have made this dream more difficult?
So for me, it's really just about living a happy, content, adventurous life. And I feel like, my happiness is dependent on career, but it's really more about like the fullness of my life besides just a career. But I do feel like that I can be a worrier, and I can also become kind of complacent. So I tend to have to remember that and keep pushing myself to try new things and try harder and to speak my truth, to continue to evolve and make sure that I don't become resentful for not speaking up, that kind of thing. So those are my biggest obstacles is sometimes I just don't find my voice.
Yeah, so I feel like my biggest dream, not to sound like I'm resting on my laurels, but I feel like I've kind of accomplished it because it's really been being able to be my authentic self. And being a multiracial woman, that's been 37 years in the making. So I would definitely say that's been my biggest obstacle. Just really trying to figure out what my identity is, because for so long it was like, I really do check a lot of boxes. There's white, Black, Latinx, and Indigenous represented in my family. So there's kind of been this balancing act of trying to figure out if I'm white enough, Black enough, Latinx enough, and feeling like I was always kind of falling short and didn't really have anybody to kind of look up to in that sense and kind of guide me on that. So I would definitely say in the last probably 5 years or so, a lot of my personal work and my personal growth has been centered around that, just kind of, appreciating who I am for who I am without getting too caught up in labels and such, but not without its challenges. So that's kind of where I'll leave it with that.
When I think about, my biggest dream, it is impacting change. I know that at the end of the day, when we're all gone, the only thing that's left is our name. And I would want my name to be synonymous with big impact of change that really is inclusive of everyone. I take that very seriously. And when I look back, that's always been me all of my life. And so that's what's really important to me. And I think that the obstacles that stand in the way are people who are fearful of change, people who really want to keep it the way that it is or the status quo. And so it only means that there is more work to do, but it doesn't mean that it won't happen.
And for me, as I'd mentioned, I'm in a second career here at the college. My first passion has always been training new officers. So I've been able to accomplish that here at the college as well. It's a huge responsibility to do. And so it's always changing. You're trying to do the very best that you can for these new folks. And they are experiencing a lot of change in the law enforcement world right now for many different reasons. So it's always a challenge. Especially here at the college, I've never been one to not speak my mind. And I think it's because I am in a second career and I've had the opportunity to make some mistakes and get some more confidence in myself since coming here to the college.
I just wanted to ask this because I think a lot of times when we're discussing our stories, people really connect to personal narratives and things that we've been through. And I just wonder, and no one can answer, everyone can answer, but to the obstacle that you spoke to that was particularly difficult for you, do you have a specific narrative example that sort of explains that in detail? Or, we can keep it as short or as long as you'd like to, but just that sort of like explains that in detail and would put people in the shoes of you as you were navigating that challenge.
I'll go ahead and go. I know that I've done a lot of training. I've spoke up about a lot of challenges that we have as a community, whether it's the college community, our local community, or in our society, as a whole. And really have been speaking up about it. And I've seen some people push back because there's fear there. And I really had to try to figure out what is that fear. And what I'm finding is that we all come in with our own experiences and our own beliefs. I talk about this in my SEED training, which is the Cultural Excellence Ideas and Discussions. And I talk about that cultural mindset. And that comes from your experiences and the exposure. So how you experience that which you were exposed to, and that kind of solidifies our beliefs and our value systems and now how we think about people. And so we use that as our truth, our big T truth. And so it's really difficult when you hear something different. And I call that the cultural mind shift. And this is where new perspectives come in, new experiences come in. And if you're not open to learning that, then it's hard to get the empathy to make that shift. And so I started thinking, well, what's between the cultural mindset and the cultural mind shift? And there's fear between there. There's a need for that empathy. It challenges your belief in your experiences. You have to get to a point of compromising and then collaboration to get to the point. And that's not always easy to do. And so I've found that. And so what I've had to learn is how to give other people grace and to listen to the different perspectives as opposed to me saying, I've done this for 20 years. I have the research, because I don't have their lived experiences. So when people start to see that I listen and that I value them, then it opens it up a little bit more, but we need more of that.
And
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go
Yes.
ahead.
Go ahead, Tamir. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of what Regina just said resonates with me, even though, different paths, different experiences. But I absolutely believe that part of my, shift in being able to be comfortable being myself has been a bit twofold. Definitely doing my work, learning how to be more empathetic, researching the history of, researching my history and others' histories, and kind of understanding the cultural context from which we operate day to day. That was a huge part of it. And then I think the other piece was really kind of doing a close look at my personal network, the people that I'm surrounded with, and, making sure that the people that, I rely on for support, that they're kind of on that same path, that they are empathetic, that they're open-minded, that they're willing to learn and have conversations, because I feel like that's been a huge part of, being able to live that authentic life, is being able to speak openly, but also still being willing to learn, because there are still mistakes to be made, and changes to happen. So I just feel like staying, keeping that space open for continuous learning has been a big piece of it for me.
Okay, we can move on to the next question here. With that said, how aware are you of your identity as a woman in daily life? A lot of you spoke about being present and staying aware of what's happening around you and being authentic. How aware are you of your identity as a woman within this society, but also in business? As all of you are professionals, how aware do you have to be of that identity as you're entering certain rooms and having certain conversations?
I think that I keep the awareness that I'm a woman all the time, but I don't ever want it to rule how I interact with other people. I just want to be seen as Karen, who is, a set of these characteristics. I don't think we can separate ourselves from being, say, I don't want you to see me as a woman, because I do want people to see me as a woman. I'm not sure how to answer that question. I mean, it's such an innate part of my being a woman, that I think the only thing I'm sure of is that I don't ever want anybody to judge me for my skill level or my intelligence or my anything because I'm a woman. So in comparison to being a man. And if I notice that, I get a little jumpy. I honestly do. Like, I definitely feel like that's the time to stick up for myself and say, why is this a part of the conversation? Why is me being a woman part of the conversation? Anyway, that's kind of the only thing that comes to mind right now for me.
And maybe just to clarify, in case anyone else is sort of grappling with how to answer that question, another way to ask that maybe would be, what does it mean to you to be a woman? As you operate throughout daily life, what about your existence as a woman sticks out to you? What's prominent about being a woman in this society? If that, creates any clarity at all. If you wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, please.
I mean, I think that there are certain characteristics that women have that others don't. Me personally, I feel like I'm a very empathetic person and very sensitive person. So I bring that into everything I do, every meeting I'm in, every interaction, every sport. And it's sometimes to my advantage, sometimes to my disadvantage. But I would never want to live without that level of empathy and sensitivity, because the world needs that. And because I can't be anything else but that. So I've learned to respect myself for that. So sometimes, because of my sensitivity, I can't drive as hard because I understand everyone else's point of view, or, something affects me a little bit harder than maybe it should. But again, I love being that way, and I wouldn't want to be any other way, because again, I think the world is lacking sensitivity right now.
Yeah. I kind of how Karen initially responded as far as, that awareness. I would also kind of agree that, every day I wake up and I look in the mirror, I don't necessarily think, oh, I'm a woman and I'm going to work from, being a woman the rest of my day. And here's how. I do think it really kind of comes from that present moment awareness where you're really, you're listening to what people are saying. You're trying to gauge how you can contribute, how you can help. But yeah, I think it really comes into play just kind of like with the attributes that Karen was mentioning. I too, try to be really empathetic and compassionate, and also, kind of keeping the bigger picture in mind, when we're talking about various strategies and things like that, professionally. And I think that's probably where it comes into play, where I'm a little more aware, like, oh, I'm a woman. I may be feeling this a little bit more than, the gentleman sitting next to me or something like that. Not trying to live, according to stereotypes, of course, but yeah, just being aware of those attributes that just kind of occur naturally in me. But again, recognizing that they may not occur in other women. So it's kind of a juggling act, I feel like, a little bit.
So as a professional, I am constantly aware of my feminine side, or being a woman in this male dominant society that is a masculine society. And when we look historically, we know that women have had to fight for their place. And there's been a lot of women, or women in general, that have been marginalized in every position and every level and every effort that they're trying to make. And so keeping that in mind, I have to always constantly think about what are those challenges, what are those stereotypes, so that when I show up, I can squash them, that doesn't become part of the issue. I mean, just something as simple, I like to wear high heels. And when you're wearing high heels, then oftentimes your stride is even slower than you typically would walk if you had on tennis shoes. And so then you're walking beside men who already have a long stride and they have on flat shoes. And so I know that I have to even pay attention to the pace that I'm going to keep up with my male counterpart, so that that doesn't become part of this deficit of mine. And so I have to keep that in mind. When I'm engaging, I have to realize that, my voice is going to be judged. If I come off too strong, then I can be looked at as the aggressor. If I come off too soft or too gentle, then I'm looked at as being too sensitive. And so I'm constantly keeping all of these different dichotomies in my head as I approach any type of professional arena. If I'm in a place or a space where I can project myself to other women, then I am constantly trying to model behavior. This is how you navigate through this storm. This is how you stand up in a cricket room, because it's not always going to be easy, but you can definitely do that. At the same time, I have a strong presence. I'm from the military. I'm celebrating the 30th year anniversary since I was in Desert Storm. We learned how to have our shoulders squared off, how to march, how to assert ourselves. And so sometimes it can come across as being too rough around the edges. So I've had to learn how to smile more. If I'm not smiling, then it looks like I'm angry or too concerned. And so I try to pay attention to, the lines in my forehead, or how I say something, or, am I softening up a little bit so that they still know that I have this presence as well. So it's always at the front of my mind as I go into a space and a place. I check to make sure, where am I at and who's my audience as I go forward.
One of the benefits of being last is I can pull from all the other folks that went before. And I'm going to start with what Regina said, because I've been accused of many times being very angry or grumpy if I'm not smiling. I look at it as that's my professional demeanor. That's the way I am when I mean business, and I certainly smile when it's appropriate, but when I'm dealing with one of my cadets or a recruit, there's a lot of times that's not appropriate. So I would tag on to that. I come from also the military for a short time, and as I've mentioned, my law enforcement career, both of which are very male-dominated careers. So you can't be in that career without being aware of being a woman. I would tail on what Karen said regarding women bring positive things to both of my careers, the sensitivity, the empathy that many men just do not bring. And it just puts a great balance into when you're making, not to be dramatic, but life or death decisions. You're dealing with people in rough situations in their lives. Women have a better way of relating in a lot of those very serious situations. So it's a real benefit. And of course, it's going to be to the forefront there. That being said, in specifically the law enforcement career, I felt that I was always trying to prove myself to be equal to a male, because you are looked at, are you as good? Will you have my back when I need you to? And it carries across to the military as well. So I do believe that I have probably over tried in some situations to be better, just to be thought of as an equal. So that's not always the best thing, but that's the truth of it.
On that note, if I could just ask a follow-up question, I guess specifically to the way Dr. Lewis responded, and then all of you really discussed, specific themes that women are sort of expected to have in their personality traits. And so with that said, how do you balance the way that people anticipate you to be as a woman with your authenticity at the same time? Because that's also been mentioned in this panel as something that's very important to all of you, is sort of staying true to yourself and being present in the moment. How do you balance, portraying yourself in a certain way when you enter rooms so that you're interpreted the way that you want to, with also being your authentic self, which is, obviously incredibly important to your success? All of you could answer that, or one of you, or whoever would like to.
I think it's like Regina said, is every situation I find myself in, every room I walk into, you kind of have to do a quick assessment of like, where do I fit in, and how do I want to fit in? Like if I want to go in there guns blazing because I feel like I have nothing to lose, great, I'll do that. But also I feel like, maybe this isn't a situation where I need to just speak the whole truth and just kind of go with the flow for a while and see how the temperature of the room is. And then when there's people who truly love you and know you every bit about you, you can just be your total authentic self very comfortably. So basically the long and short of it is you sort of, and when you're sensitive or empathetic enough, you can get a sense pretty quickly. That's when you sort of use your intuition too. And you can get a sense of what's going on around you to know how much to push for who you are versus like roll with it. So that's kind of how I operate.
So that makes, I'm sorry, please, Dr. Lewis.
Absolutely. And so I think to have that balance, I code switch. I have had to identify what is my authentic self in a casual setting, right? Among friends and family and so on and so forth. And then what is my authentic self in a professional setting?
Right.
And so switching back and forth, and I believe that we all do that, male, female, it doesn't matter, but I think we do some of that, but I really had to work hard on doing that. Then when I get into the space, it's important for me to make connections by understanding the other person first, so that I know how are they showing up. So I'll know how I need to show up, with the ultimate goal of building relationships of mutual respect. So it's just kind of really paying attention. So I'm always looking around the room. So as a public speaker, I'm constantly in a place where people are taking photos. They're always snapping pictures of me or other people who do this as a profession, even when you're eating. And you cannot control the pictures that they put out, but you can control what pictures they are able to take. So I'm constantly observing the space, even in the military. So because I was in the military, I'm constantly looking who's behind me, who's in front of me, beside me, who came in the room, where are the exits, all of these things. So all of that comes into play. As a woman professional, I'm still looking like who's in the room, what are their expectations, how are they showing up, what are they expecting from me, how are they reacting to the way that I show up. And it starts to tell me how much of what side of me I actually bring into the room. Because what I don't want to do is stay in one code, and then that's not authentic either. I want people to know me for who I am. So every once in a while, I'll bring a little bit of my casual side in, but I'm very careful, I'm very thoughtful, and I'm very intentional in doing that to kind of see where people are.
I would agree with both Regina and Karen on that. Ultimately, reading the room, of course, I guess I think of it more as like feeding off of other people's energy. I feel like I can feel when there's some bad energy happening in the room. And, like Regina mentioned, looking how other people are showing up, and just getting that reading. And that takes presence. That takes, getting out of my head for a moment, just really taking in what's around me, and just trying to stay flexible. And I think that's also when the intuition comes in, like, okay, I'm going to show them a little bit of authenticity with, a little light joke that's kind of relevant to what's going on, but I'm not going to keep joking the whole time to make it look like I'm not taking this seriously. So you got to kind of play with it.
So what I got from those answers is sort of the natural intuition and emotional intelligence, not to be stereotypical, that women tend to possess. We have superpowers. We can enter rooms and sort of read what's going on and adjust to what's going on in that moment. Yeah, that's incredible. And I think that's, as I'm naturally finding to do that myself, that's sort of what I do. You just have to feel things out and go from there. So I like that. With that said, what is one skill that you feel like every woman should have, whether that be professionally, socially, however you choose to interpret that question?
Well, I was thinking about it in two different directions. So I'll share two things I think women should know how to do. I was raised to be really independent and try to work things out, like figure out how to unscrew that broken drawer, how to change my own oil. So I feel like there's these certain acts of independence that, that learning how to not rely on anybody else but yourself to get some basic life things done, because there's not always going to be somebody there to do it for you. So there's that practical side, which I have to say my father and my mother both installed in me in different ways. But then the other one is that we've kind of touched on it a little bit, is kind of like knowing when to speak up and speak your truth, and knowing when to go with the flow and try not to control everything. Because I can tend to want like everything just to be a certain way. And if it doesn't go exactly that way, I start to kind of feel off kilter. And it's like, you have to learn to go with the flow. You're going to be around people you don't like, people you don't agree with. You're going to be in terrible situations in life. And you just got to stay true to yourself, even if you don't really know what that looks like yet. And learn to go with the flow.
I would say for me, knowing when to and when not to take yourself so seriously, I kind of veer on the side that less is more. But I feel like looking back on my life, a lot of the situations that just brought me so much, negativity, or just brought me to the edge of a mental breakdown or something. I mean, in hindsight, those situations weren't as serious or devastating as I was making them out to be at the time. So just really having a good sense of, really when to commit yourself, and really, you want to be, you want to make change happen, but also having that ability to step back and look at the bigger picture and be like, okay, what's really going to be the long-term effect of this? It might be nothing, or it just might not be as grandiose as I'm making it out to be. So yeah, as far as the life skills go, I think that's a pretty huge one for me.
I kind of want to piggyback on both what Karen and Tamara said. I just call it the 3 S's. And one of them is that to be sensitive and to keep that sensitivity. Another is to be strong, because you're going to face adversity, but keep that strength. But the third one I think is the most important because of the other 2, and that is to always have self-care, to really take care of yourself holistically, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. All of those pieces are going to be extremely important because we are carrying by nature. We take on a lot on our shoulders, and sometimes that can take us down. And if we haven't taken care of ourselves, we will stay down. So I think it's important.
Yeah.
Sorry, couldn't find my button. I think as far as advice, I would say very much be honest and truthful with yourself. Be appropriate, but also don't be fake, for a better term, because then you're going to just be somebody else, and you might not be happy in what you're doing, and you're going to have difficulty achieving your goals if you're not, honest and driving forward. To tail a little bit on what Karen said, I'm not saying that you always speak your mind, because we all know there's times it's not appropriate to speak your mind, or maybe just know how to, whether it be written or the right person to approach when you need to get something out. But by all means, be truthful to yourself. Don't be fake, and drive forward. I would add to something Regina said, is in addition to self-care, also have a really good support group of people, whether that be your significant other, whether that be your family or your friends, because we all need to have sounding boards and people to support our ideas and to bounce things off of as we go. So.
Okay, yeah, thank you all for that. That was great advice from each one of you. So we've gotten sort of the advice out of the way. Let's get to why you're able to give that advice. Let's brag on ourselves for a second. What are your biggest successes? And on your way to that success, did you have a group of women specifically that supported you? And if you didn't, well, if you did, first of all, how did they help that? And if you didn't, do you wish that you did?
I think for me, success, it can mean a lot of things. So I'm going to put it into kind of career and work life. And I think that my biggest success is maintaining work-life balance, because it's so important to me. Because what I realize is I've never really, and I'm going to be very revealing here, but as far as my career and my work, I never had this driving passion for what I felt like I was born to do in my life. But and some people just don't have that. I developed a skill set that I enjoy that's given me a great series of careers. But I think the thing that brings me the most passion is living life outside and seeing beauty and hiking and skiing and climbing and biking and finding love with friendships and other kinds of relationships. And so it was always like, yeah, I like my job, but I love life. And so I had to navigate that to get as to become financially independent, have a successful career. But I've always felt so strongly about that other side of my life that I never gave one up for the other. And as far as having a mentor for that, I really didn't. I think, except for the people that I share those passions with, of travel and outdoor life and things like that. So I think, I had friends that supported me in that. That's all.
Yeah. So for me, as Karen mentioned, I think success is kind of relative and pretty personal to the individual. And thinking about this question, I would have to say probably my biggest success has been taking a trip, a solo trip by myself to Iceland a few years back. And it wasn't so much the trip itself that I deemed a success, but really just kind of all the other things about it that going somewhere by myself without a man, to have as my backup was pretty empowering. It was pretty much the most empowering experience I've had in my life to date. It was my first time flying, over the Atlantic Ocean. I'd never been to Europe before. So just really that whole experience of doing it on my own, literally going out into nature and just playing in it, discovering it, and just relying on myself and having that time to reflect on, the beauty around me and feeling insignificant, but in a good way, just understanding how big the world really is and, my role in that. And, after I came home from that trip, I feel like, just kind of how I operated myself kind of shifted in a significant way. I would say that trip was a pretty big piece in me accomplishing, my dream of being my authentic self. Because I really was able to kind of get down and dirty and I had to rely on myself. I got lost. I would get, there was nobody else to blame except me. So it was a really, it was a moment of growth. And as far as people, other women to support me, I didn't have necessarily like a mentor before that trip happened. But what I discovered, which was kind of cool, is there's a group that was started by women called the Solo Travelers Society. And so they were kind of like a resource for me as I planned this trip and got ready to go through it. And it was just really cool and inspiring to see a lot of women of all ages, but particularly women that were older than me who had been doing this for decades, these solo adventures. And just, hearing their experiences was just all the more empowering and, kind of helped field out some of the noise that I was hearing from other people, particularly my family, because, they're worried. But I had an uncle in particular that was pretty concerned that I did not have a male companion on that trip. So I had to kind of to know when to block that out and let the good stuff in. So.
I'm just enjoying listening to the both of you. It's just amazing. I think there's a couple of things that I would say were my biggest accomplishments. One being successfully raising my son to, he's winning awards. They're paying for his college. He's a professor or instructor at the Air Force Academy. Yesterday, I got a great opportunity to speak at their national conference. And he put out on Facebook how proud he was that his mom, was a part of that, which that in and of itself makes me proud. I think another one is having a successful career. Teaching, I never imagined that that's what I was going to do, but I believe that I've made a mark and made a difference. And then being a successful business owner, owning my own business. And I've been in business for the past 18 years. And now I have opened up the doors here in Colorado Springs, which has been really great. And the people who have been a part of that really probably helped me with my biggest success. And that is truly being my authentic self in these professional arenas. And what do I mean by my authentic self? I mean, one, being able to understand that I show up as a woman, I show up as a Black woman, I show up as a Black woman who was a single parent. I show up as a Black woman, single parent who is a veteran, you know, just like these layers upon layers. And so one of my mentors, or one of the powerful women, is my mentor, Dr. LaVon Neal, who really has taught me about endarkened epistemology. And that's ways of knowing, but at a standpoint of being a person of color in this society. Another powerful woman, and sometimes these powerful women don't know that they are that powerful, or that they are mentoring you just because of your observation, or maybe something that they said. So, you know, all of my life, hair has been a big deal for me. And it wasn't until I met you, Chelsea. You're one of those powerful women. I looked at how you would carry yourself and how you could wear your natural hair. And I remember you telling me, oh, come on, Dr. Lewis, you know, you could do this. And, you know, I was watching and I was listening, and I learned how to do this myself to just add to my authentic self. And so I believe that that is probably my biggest success, is to be able to show up with all of my intersections and still be able to successfully navigate through my professional arena, as well as raising my son.
I just want to jump in real quick and say that one of my biggest successes has been when I stopped straightening my hair. So I appreciate that discussion on hair.
If I could, again, tail on a couple things that were already said. So my success, my career has been something that I've strived for a very long time. From the time I was in high school, I knew I wanted to pursue a law enforcement career, and so it has been very successful, and I'm very happy for that success. I think that I also, like Karen, like to think I have a good balance. Although sometimes you ask people, they'll say I work too much. But there's always time to play in a few years too. I think I've enjoyed traveling all my life. I've enjoyed doing a number of different sports. And so I do try to make that balance. And I would tell anybody, as far as your success, it's not just your career. There's so much more to your success than just your career, but we do measure it that way. So that's one thing. And it's really cool to hear you other panelists about what your successes are. And it really is very interesting to hear about people's background. So thank you again for the opportunity to just listen and share a little bit. Thanks.
You know, I just wanted to interject one more thing. When I have to say that my dad was a mentor for me. I know, but he was sort of like, in a way, he taught me what not to do, because he, he died very young of cancer, and I got to sit with him a few weeks before he died and just talk about his life. And one of his biggest regrets in his life was that he was constantly worried about providing for us, giving us everything we needed, us being happy, him working to have a big enough paycheck to take care of us economically. And, on some level, I truly believe that destroyed him. And I didn't want that to happen to me, and so I think I made a choice. And I saw that as I was growing up, how hard he took such hard knocks in his career. And, but we had everything we really ever needed. I was middle class Connecticut growing up. And so I never saw that we were lacking anything. I only saw my dad's stress and unhappiness of trying to provide for us. And I just realized that that's not a path I wanted to take in my life. So, maybe it meant I didn't have as good of a career, have as much money, but I felt like I needed to kind of follow my bliss a little bit more, because I truly am my father's daughter. And, you know, he would have been out there climbing and skiing and doing all those things with me. You know, but he said, but when I retire, I'll do those things with you, you know, and he died 4 months after he retired. And so, you know, if I could give advice to anybody who's going to hear this, like, don't wait to live your life, whatever that looks like.
I want to piggyback on that, Karen. My dad, the same thing. And after he retired, he had a massive heart attack exactly a month later, July 4th, 1977. And so I learned not to wait. I enjoy life right now, in the moment.
That's beautiful. And thank you guys for sharing and being so transparent in that. What that reminds me of is specifically the phrase intersectionality, which I'm sure all of you guys are very familiar with. But I'll just, for anyone who will watch this panel back, I just want to sort of give it a definition. Intersectionality is the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group. And so with that said, we have a shared experience as women, you know, operating and living throughout this world, but we also have different social factors, different identity characteristics that allow us to live a different life. And so I just wonder, throughout your experiences, how intersectionality has affected you personally, maybe through class, as some of you were just speaking to, maybe through race or other things. And what does that mean? What does that phrase intersectionality mean to you personally? Dr. Lewis just kind of talked about hair and how that sort of affected her life. And it completely really just touches me that I gave any sort of influence to her, because watching her as a young Black woman absolutely gave me confidence at any step during my journey to sort of have a blueprint or someone to look at on where to go next. But with that said, just like the question of intersectionality and how these different social categories that we belong to, aside from being women, affect you on your journey. Maybe you answer that question through a personal narrative. Maybe you answered that question through just what intersectionality means to you.
I would defer to not being first on this one, because I have to kind of think through that a little bit more.
Yeah, take all the time that any of you need. Yeah,
if you go ahead. Yeah, so yeah, that's a good question. And I would say for me, I mentioned previously, you know, my multiracial background, had some challenges growing up as far as, you know, forming that identity. And I think part of, you know, coming back from that trip on Iceland, I realized, you know, instead of getting so caught up on how I can better fit in with the Black group, with the Latinx group, with the white groups, I just kind of stopped trying and thought, you know, I'm just going to try winging this on my own, just being me, and see how that goes. And kind of fast forward to some volunteer work that I started to get involved in and continue to be involved with. And I volunteer with a local mental health organization called NAMI. They're the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And when I started volunteering with them, I think that was probably a really pretty pivotal experience as far as intersectionality goes, because when I started volunteering with them and getting involved with their programs, that pretty much put me front and center in the local community, which was very diverse, working with people of all ages, all ethnicities, orientations, and they all had this single kind of common denominator in that they had a mental health challenge. So I feel like that experience and interacting with those people just really kind of opened up my mind that much more, and just really made me better prepared to be with people of all stages of life, and to hear them and to support them in the best way that I can.
You know, when I think about intersectionality, and when this really was illuminated for me, is when I started learning about women's suffrage and understanding that, you know, women couldn't vote. And so we band together, we fought the fight so that we could vote. women started talking about women liberation and all of this stuff. And I thought, yes, because that's me. I'm in this category. And then to find out that once women were allowed to vote, I still couldn't vote. I wasn't seen as a woman or as a person, so to speak, to vote. And it was because of the color of my skin. So that put a layer on top of any and every intersection there is. I mean, if I were a part of the LGBTQ plus community, I still have to put the layer of the color of my skin on top of that. And so it affects everything that I am and everything that I do. So when a person says, yes, but I suffer too, or I don't think that it's fair, or I need equal rights, I get it. But just add that race on top of that. You know, just yesterday we were talking about whether or not people who are transgender could participate in sports that takes ability and strength, and the unfairness of that and all this. And I get it. I get the whole challenge, but add that other layer to it. So there's always these different layers. And so I've seen these challenges show up for me in many spaces and many places. And I have to keep those things in mind, added on top my social economic status. Like, you know, I grew up in the struggle. I was from poverty. And so there were places that I didn't know how to show up, you know, because there were these hidden rules and behaviors that you have to possess to be in different groups of people. So that was another layer. So there's constantly different layers that I always have to be abreast of at every moment.
Yeah, and I think that's why I appreciate my biggest learnings as an adult have come out of working at this college. You know, I am the perfect picture of white privilege. You know, I was born in middle-class family in a really nice town, and it was Title IX, so I got to play like baseball with the boys, you know, like, so I thought I was just like everybody else, and everybody else was just like me, and I lived in that little bubble for a long, long time. And I do feel like I was very accepting of other people just by my nature, because I do recall saying, hey, I can talk to whoever I want, I can date whoever I want, whatever color they may be. And then, you know, as I aged, I realized, wow, I've been living in a bubble. And, you know, working in such a diverse setting like this and having opportunities like this panel today has been, you know, very eye-opening to me to say, hey, you know, that this is, you know, the world doesn't revolve around you, and there's a lot going on that you need to think about and be open to and help make change around. And, you know, I'm grateful that that came to me, you know, that, you know, from the work that I do now, that I've been exposed to the diversity that I am exposed to now. So hopefully it'll help me to continue to grow.
I would tag a little bit on what Karen said. I grew up in small town, Western New York, and very Caucasian, and my education with other cultures and beliefs, etc., began in the military, because we have just a great group of people, you know, that are part of the military. And then my daily job, honestly, helped in law enforcement because we interact with all people, and you really do have to, you know, open your eyes, I guess is the best thing to say. I could tell some stories on grandparents and other people that in my growing up, I'm not ashamed, but just, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that you actually believe that. And so I like to think that I'm open. I've got to say I've worked some with Regina through our program last year, and we're going to continue once we ever get students back in the college again. And that's been an eye-opening experience with the SEED and some of the other programs just beyond what I brought when I came here. So I'm really grateful, because I think as long as we all go in with our eyes open, there's a lot of things we can learn about each other's cultures, each other's races, sexual orientation, whatever it might be. And I just think we need to be open to learn and make those changes and look to people to broaden our experiences and thank them for that.
Thank you all for just your honesty and vulnerability on that question. I know sometimes some social, some things that we experience socially are difficult to talk about, and some things that we may not necessarily understand socially are difficult to talk about. So I appreciate your openness and vulnerability on that question. With all of those things in mind that you guys mentioned, we're nearing an hour, so we're going to get down to the last two questions. But I just want to ask, with all those things in mind, what do you wish that the world would look like in 50 years' time? And what all does that include? That's a sort of broad question, but if you could narrow it to tailor it to your own thinking, what are you hoping for to happen over the next 50 years?
For me, I think I just would, this is a very idealistic hope, but I've always been that way, of just people being kinder and gentler to each other. And then there being more of a balance between people's desire for wealth and productivity versus the desire to have the earth be a place that's sustainable. So it's really trying to find that balance between like taking care of every living thing and not having that come second to our abundance, our personal abundance of whatever that is. Because I feel like that is the selfishness that is going to be the death of the human race, simply put. So it's just kind of approaching everything that's alive and that gives something to us that we have to give back, whether that's a person, an animal, a plant, the earth itself.
Yeah, I would say some of the things that I'm hoping for in the next 50 years, definitely echoing Karen's sentiments about the planet. We need a place to live, and money's like the one thing that there's not currently a limit on, right? Like we put limits on food, on sex, on drugs, or at least we try to anyways. But technically you can have as much as you want. So I guess that, not saying we should impose kind of drastic limits on income, but just, kind of taking a moment to think about the long-term implications of not having that kind of limit. And yeah, absolutely. In the next 50 years, we'll love to see, oceans without trash in them would be kind of cool. And more equitable housing, and hopefully sooner than 50 years, a real effective healthcare solution. Yeah, those are things I'm hoping for.
Wow, in 50 years, and 50 years isn't that long, I believe I still have a possibility of being on this earth in 50 years. Yeah, that's my plan. I can collect all my money from the insurance company over the age of 100. So I'm going to be here. I need all my money, right? But I would like to see leadership be to the extreme of diverse. I'd like to see a diverse leadership across the entire nation, if not the world. Also with people in positions of authority, whether that's a teacher or anything, just in the position of authority, really making that diverse. And as well as people at the decision-making table, this would include people, of all ages. When I say diverse and all abilities, we need them all there. I want to see that we no longer have homelessness or poverty, people who are food and home insecure. I'd like to be able to see that. And I would like to see us be more equitable, inclusive, and diverse for all marginalized people. I'd like to see that.
I'd like to start with, if we look at our society now, we've lost our neighborhoods, our sense of neighborhoods. Most everyone just kind of stays in their own little bubble. Then they interact with their family and their small group of friends, but we aren't neighbors. And so I think a lot of things would start with that, because if we're more neighborly, then we could, help people if they need some extra food or they need, some medical care, things like that. Obviously, I would love to see what's going on right now in my world of law enforcement and society go completely around, and everyone be treated respectfully and properly, regardless of who they are. That is a huge thing right now, and I know it's going to take a number of years before it comes back or comes to where it needs to be. Healthcare is another thing, because it's so sad to see drugs. That's a big thing with me as well. You look at the problem of the opioid problem, especially across middle America. Just people are dying. In my small town in New York, they've lost kids regularly, and it's just, if we could just eliminate all of those drug issues, I think a lot of us would be so much farther along. I would tail on Regina's comment about leadership. I think it would be great to not have parties, political parties. Everyone just works together and gets things done as needed in the government specifically, because the bipartisan thing is not working very well, as we've seen. So, thank you.
Thank you all for your answers. So we're going to move into the last question of the evening. And this one I think is really interesting. The question is, what are 3 traits you want to be remembered for? And do you believe in legacies? And what I think is interesting about this question is, as we remember events historically, women sort of play a supportive role to legacies. So when we think about FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and his legacy of the New Deal, Eleanor Roosevelt played a large role in that, but she historically is remembered as playing a supportive role. When we think about Martin Luther King, Coretta Scott King also played an instrumental role in his legacy, but she's also seen as sort of a supportive role. So I really like the idea of framing our own legacies as women. And I think about that through things that I'm creating now and what I want for my own future, what I'll be remembered for when it's my time to go. So I'm curious, what are 3 traits that you want to be remembered for? And do you believe in legacies? What do you think your own legacy will be?
I think for me that it's the esoteric things of, she was loving, kind, fun, people wanted to be around me. And honestly, I believe in legacies, and I think great people who make an impact on the world leave a legacy. I don't particularly see that I will have a legacy, and that's okay, because I feel like a legacy is, I know that this could cause a little conflict, but in some ways, I feel like if you're operating in your life in order to lead a legacy, there's 2 things that are happening. One, you want to be known forever. So there's an ego associated with that. Then the other side of it is, well, that you want to do such good in the world, and that's the legacy. Whether you're remembered or not, the good happened. So, I think for me, it's just on a personal level, and want to make sure that the people that are left beside, who knew me after I'm gone, that they just look back with fond memories of me. But I'm not sure that I'm going to create a legacy. I don't think that I am destined to be one of the people on this planet that will make a change whose name will be in the history books and be talked about. in the future. And that's just the way it is, you know.
So traits that I would like to be remembered by, my sense of humor, my empathetic nature, and my hair, because I've been told it's pretty great. So and on a more serious note, as far as legacies go, you know, I feel it's also another kind of one of those relative things. Do I want a statue of me somewhere? No. But I also don't think it's up to me to leave a legacy. I feel like the way I'm living my life now, the ways I try to give back to my community, I feel like those are things that, you know, as Karen mentioned, I want to be, you know, it'd be nice to be remembered for the good that I tried to give to this world. And as opposed, you know, rather than a legacy, you know, really just hopeful that people can learn something from me and take something away, you know, that I did and apply it in their own lives and, you know, have it lead to great, amazing things. And as Karen was sharing, you know, I started thinking that there are a lot of people who we know historically, but in their lifetime, they were completely unknown, and their work and the recognition of what they contributed came, you know, years after their death. So I think that's something also to consider, you know, that even though you may not be looking specifically to leave a legacy, it might happen anyway, whether you want to or not, because of how you lived your life. So.
You know, some of the traits would be that I'm hardworking, that I take people over process any day, that I am inspirational, and that I build authentic relationships. I'm authentic in relationships. And a legacy that I'd like to leave behind is, she did it, so can I.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Regina, I just have to say this on a lighter note. You'll be known as a legacy for your shoes.
I started to say that, I really did.
It just amazes me that you're able to function. So
Look, you know, I am building a new closet, and I said, well, just extend it out to the garage, because I need a place for all my shoes. And he was like, wow.
That is your
you Imelda Lewis.
Yes.
So as far as my traits, Chelsea, I would say dedicated to what I'm doing. Also fun loving is another thing. And loyal to the people that I work with. I don't see myself as leaving a legacy either, but to tail a little bit on what Karen said, I certainly hope there's things that I've done that people do look to as they follow their path. That's just very humbling and honoring to know that. So I would leave it at that.
I just want to close out that question by saying Christina Shafaros, that put this panel together, is a very complicated and brilliant mind. She absolutely chose each one of you for a specific reason. And I would say that in itself sort of points to some legacy on a micro level, you know, to say the least. So I would say that you definitely are impacting people in a certain way, and your perspective is unique. And I've seen that throughout the panel today. And I appreciate your honesty and vulnerability, and everyone just, you know, having a conversation and just sort of getting outside of the box of the way that we typically talk about these things. I just want to go around if anyone has any like final closing comments that they wanted to add, and then we'll sort of close out the panel from there. Again, thank you all so much.
Thank you, Chelsea. For me, I just it was a pleasure to talk with all of you and learn a little bit more about the women that are in my life, in my work life. And I just appreciate the time to share my thoughts about things like this, because very seldom do you get to do that. And it's kind of freeing. So thank you, everyone. And hopefully people will get on the website and and take the time to listen to these, because I think there are so many nuggets of wisdom and insight that people could get from this. And maybe you could learn the easy way instead of the hard way, like we all did.
Absolutely. I'm just grateful for this opportunity. I think it's an awesome thing that I hope keeps happening. I hope we keep creating this kind of space to have these conversations, because this was a great discussion. I'm so thankful to have been on this panel with each of you. And if the other panels or anything like this, I mean, again, it's going to be a tremendous resource for not only other women on our campus, but just everybody in our campus community and the greater Colorado Springs community, anybody who watches. So it's just awesome. Thank you.
I too want to thank everyone. This was a great opportunity, especially to spend time with these amazing women. Chelsea, you are an amazing woman. If I could have been half the person that you are when I was your age, I can't even imagine where I would be today. The same with Christina. I've watched Christina grow through the years, and she's put in the hard work, and man, that's what it looks like. So if you want to see that example, go to her. I do believe that there's no way, it's almost impossible to have enough of these videos, because we have amazing people at Pikes Peak Community College, amazing women at Pikes Peak Community College at every level, in every location, that I have been able to glean, nuggets of wisdom and what I would do. And so I just really feel honored to be able to have been a part of something that's much bigger than all of us here today put together. So thank you.
I would just tail on that. Christina, thank you, and Chelsea, best of luck to you. Hopefully we'll hear more through your career as well. Ladies, thank you for sharing. And it was definitely an experience. I had no idea what to expect today. I cannot say I've been on anything like this. So thank you again for the opportunity. It was humbling, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
And thank you, Skylar.